This is VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres, and also the Broadwave streaming service, which can be found on the Langley Cello Blogspot page. Just look that up and you'll find it there. It's being streamed live, and of course if you do listen online, you are allowed to be entertained. Listening on air, this is all about testing. Whoops, there's a noisy fader. It's all about testing the equipment here and allowing for people to test their receivers. We're doing an AM transmission on 1865 kilohertz and FM on 147.475 megahertz, both 160 metres and 2 metres. As per usual, we will get the ball rolling with something from the 1920s. We use a range of test material from far and beyond places, stuff that's not in the public domain and is mostly out of copyright, and just allows us to check things. There we go. Let's have a listen to the Savoy Orpheans. We go back to 1927. We hear a song titled, an old Victor record, I Want to Be Miles from Everyone. And what can I tell you about this? It was recorded at the Small Queen's Hall in London. Yes, it says here, I've got the date written down. It's recorded on July the 18th, 1927. And we heard straight from the Savoy Hotel in London, we heard the Savoy Orpheans and I Want to Be Miles from Everyone. And I think the piano player on that record was Carol Gibbons. He directed the ensemble at that time, and I think he was the piano soloist on that disc, on that old HMV record, recorded in 1927. Good way to get the ball rolling this week for these test transmissions on HF and VHF. All right, the next one is on the turntable, and we're going to hear the Jazz Pilots, which is a pseudonym for Harry Rees's, one of Harry Rees's multiple ensembles, and a bit of a fun old parlophone record from about the same time, about 1927. And, let me check the title. Yes, it's Who Was the Lady I Saw You With Last Night. So, without any further ado, we hear the vocal of, I think it's Tom Stacks, I think he was the vocalist. He's the poor fellow who died in a fire rescuing his drum kit. He was the drummer with Harry Rees's group. Very distinctive vocal style. We played him a few times on these tests. All right, I better put the ident on, and then I'll hot balloon over to the turntable. I'll let it talk. I'll let the ID tell you who I am and what's going on. This is VK3SL, testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the Broadway stream.
Lady I saw you with last night. I cannot place her, I tried with all my might. Who was the lady? Now let me have it right.
That was no lady, that was just my wife.
The lady I saw you with last night. I cannot place her, I tried with all my might. Who was the lady? Now let me have it right.
That was no lady, that was just my wife.
Who was that lady I saw you with last night?
I wonder who that was. We'll never know. That was Tom Stacks with Harry Rees's The Jazz Pilots, recorded in the about 1927. And, what else? Oh, yes, the unmistakable banjo playing of Harry Rees on that recording. So that sort of is a dead giveaway, as is the hot arrangements. They're a pretty upfront band, actually, and they made a huge number of recordings on almost every label with a different pseudonym. So on Parlophone, in this instance, they were the Jazz Pilots. Okay, well, I'm going to do a bit of a Whiteman feature today. For the first part of the program, we'll have a listen to some of the Whiteman's excursions into hi-fi in the early 1930s. In the 2400 series, Victor series, from about 1932 onwards, they used, one of the Bell Labs was equipped with very, excellent reproduction or recording equipment, and of course the equipment was never sort of discernible on the discs and the playback equipment of that time, but now we're able to sort of discover an entirely new world of colour and interest in these recordings. So there's been quite a few uploads lately, so I thought we'd sort of look at some of those. But as a segue into that, we'll hear a slightly earlier Whiteman ensemble recorded in 1928. Actually very well recorded in the beautiful pressing here on Okaya. And it's one of the most famous of Bix Beiderbecke's recordings from that period with Frankie Trumbauer and his orchestra. It's under the auspices of Whiteman. And this features one of only a couple of what they termed as chase sequences. And that's where Bix Beiderbecke playing cornet and Frankie Trumbauer playing C melody sax would play a sort of a displaced melody where one would play a question and the other would play an answer. So you get this sort of antecedent and consequent to the phrases. It's really effective, and they did it superbly. It's quite characterful and absolutely masterful, to be honest. And when you think that type of free improvising was a relatively new thing, it's all the more wondrous. So you can only imagine how generations of musicians were inspired by this. So you hear the chase chorus after Scrappy, who's the singer on this? It's Scrappy Lambert, that's right. And then after the vocal chorus, you'll hear this remarkable chase sequence between the C melody sax, an instrument you just never hear anymore. It's completely obsolete now. And the cornet playing, unmistakable cornet playing of Bix Beiderbecke. Amazing musician. All right, so we'll have a listen to Borneo. This is Frankie Trumbauer and his orchestra, and this is VK3SL testing.
Way down in Borneo, there's a wild dance called the Borneo, way down on Borneo Bay. Even though you've got a corneo, you'll dance till the break of dawnio, right down old Borneo way. Wild man Sam with his clothes all torneo, toot-toot-toots on his bamboo horneo, and the bamboo babies start to sway. When you see them do that Borneo, you'll just put your jewels in Borneo, way down on Borneo Bay.
And we heard Frankie Trumbauer and the orchestra with Borneo. Pretty bad words. Even if you've got a corneo, you'll dance to the something about Dorneo, it says. To the break of Dorneo when you've got a corneo on your foot. Brilliant. Wonderful poetry. Yes, so and you've probably heard the chase sequence there. It's quite a groundbreaking recording when you consider the way they're playing off each other and the way that they sort of responded in kind with the phraseology. And Bix was in absolute top form at that point, and there's a lot of adventurism in his improvisations, matched by Frankie Trumbauer. It's great to hear the C melody sax. It's got quite a distinctive sound. It's a much subtler quality to the alto and the tenor, which sort of predominate in later generations. But C melody apparently is quite a hard instrument to play, and very hard to play in tune, and it doesn't sort of naturally resonate. I think it's to do with the harmonic series and the size of the instrument. It's not the instrument doesn't naturally work. It's got to be, or the notes have to be lipped up, and it requires a very good ear to play it. So yes, they become more of a museum piece. Oh, since we're talking about this, let's have a listen to that little jazz chorus again. The chase sequence between Bix and Tram. We're almost there. I think I can just fade in. Well, here's Mr. Scrappy Lambert, and when he's finished his vocal, we'll hear it in its glory, and then see what you make of it on a second hearing. Here we go. Okay, well, there we go. That's the famous chase sequence. They did another one. There's one, I think it's Big Boy, an slightly earlier recording, but it's a predecessor to the some of the more lavish improvisations that you hear in the swing era, and particularly when the musicians are responding directly to each other with the type of phrasing and the melodic shape and stuff. So. I really love that recording. I remember that when I first heard it, I was about 12 or 13, and I loved it then. And now there's fabulous transfers of this online. This particular one's from ProZoot, who I mentioned last week, where we get a lot of the material for these tests. I try and use the archive here as much as possible as well, because you might as well play these records. Now, moving on with this theme of hi-fi from the early 30s. It was one of the Victor studios in New York, and as I said, it's the 24,000 series on Victor from the early 30s that you see these records. There's quite a few of them around, and yes, it was the Bell Labs recording apparatus. They had one studio, so it's interesting. There are examples of bands playing on the same date, but in different studios with different ambience. So it's the stuff we're listening for these hi-fi recordings. So let's have a listen to this. This is Paul Whiteman and his orchestra, a track called Let's Begin. And this was recorded in, what date? November the 3rd, 1933. And have a listen to how hi-fi this is. It is absolutely extraordinary for that time. It just shows what could be done way back in 1933. This is VK3SL testing.
got me going, what you gonna do? Is it up to me? Is it up to you? What kind of game is this we've begun? Was it done just for fun? We have necked till I'm wrecked. Won't you tell me what you expect? Is this to be a case of kiss and never tell? Folly and farewell, heaven or maybe hell. Which is it gonna be, love or gin? Wife or sin? Let's begin. Tell folly and farewell, heaven or maybe hell. Which is it gonna be, love or gin, wife or sin? Let's begin and make a mess of both of our bright young lives.
And we heard the Paul Whiteman Orchestra, and that was Let's Begin, I think it was. And quite an interesting bit of background to that. I was just reading about these early Bell Labs, this particular studio and the environment. And it only extended up to 1934. So between 1931 and 1934, there are quite a few recordings which extended right up to 14 kilohertz, which is quite amazing. And then they discontinued and sort of went back to lo-fi for another couple of decades. So it was an experiment, and it's just an interesting one that we can only hear in hindsight. They had no way of telling at the time. But of course you could hear the syllables clashing, the cymbals, and a lot of upper transients which you just wouldn't hear in a more conventional recording from that time. So yeah, hats off to Bell Labs. And we heard Ramona Davies on that recording, by the way. She was the vocalist. So I think we can find another one from that same series. I have a few of them here. Here we go. Here's another one. This is 1934. So this would be towards the end of that period. And yeah, all right, we'll have a listen to Born to be Kissed, another Paul Whiteman disc from the Victor Studios in New York. This one recorded in June 1934. This is VK3SL. I'm testing on 160 meters, 2 meters, and streaming online via the Broadwave streaming service.
Born to be kissed, you're so hard to resist. In your eyes there's a dangerous blue, demanding that you be kissed. You are made to make love to me would be fine. What a wonderful pair we two will be, tell me you will be mine. I was born to be yours, say you're happy, I'm yours. I was meant to be right from the start, the one that your heart adores. Oh, it's easy to see what the future will be. Wedding bells will insist you were born to be kissed by me. Wedding bells will insist you were born to be kissed by me.
And we heard Ramona Davies and the orchestra, and Paul Waitman's orchestra from 1934. That was June 1934. And an example of hi-fi in the early 30s. That's got that particular record, along with quite a few others from the 2400 series, 24,000 series, I should say, on Victor from the Victor Studios in New York. Feature frequency response from 20 hertz right up to 14K, which is just unbelievable, really, when you think about it, that long ago. One more from the, so there's heaps of them here, but I think I'll just choose one more for the moment, and this is another one of ProZoot's offerings. Same band, same era, same studio, and we hear... what's it called? Yes, Look What I've Got. This is Paul Whiteman, and I say hello to Mr. CSJ, who's listening and gave me a signal report. Thanks for that, Clint. All right, this is VK3SL. This is a test transmission on 160 metres and 2 metres, and also streaming on live via the Broadwave streaming service, which can be found on the Langley Family Blogspot page. Just type in langleycello.blogspot and you will find the streaming service, and this whole program is available there, and you're allowed to be entertained if you listen on the Blogspot, but of course you're certainly not to be entertained listening on the wireless. And that was Paul Whiteman and the orchestra. Look What I've Got. And I think we heard the vocals of Peggy Healy on that disc again from 1933. And one of those hi-fi recordings made by Victor, which we've only been able to realise in more recent times since we've been able to re-equalise and play back on modern facilities. So it's great to hear this early stuff in such fidelity. Interesting, though, on that particular recording, the vocalist is obviously using a much lower fi mic than the rest of the band. And you do hear this on some of them. Some of them, the vocalists are using sort of crap carbon mics, and the rest of the band are using the Nouveau condenser mics, which offer such great frequency responses. So you sort of get this disparity. There are a few really pronounced examples. That one does have that feature, or lack of feature. May not have been so discernible on air because it was pretty much a orchestral recording on the whole. But great, orchestration, great commercial sound the Whiteman Band had in that at that time. Anyhow, I thought that would be a bit of fun to have a feature on Paul Whiteman's band. Now, I had a bit of a sift through the rack and found another stash of acetates I'd completely forgotten about. And as soon as I pulled them off the shelf, there was a confetti of black acetate surface as they flaked off the records, which was a bit of a shame. So a number of them have sort of been lost forever. But there's a couple of bits and pieces which could be fun to feature here and there, including an ABC variety program from the 1940s with Jim Gussie's band, which I think is quite probably the only copy in existence, so we might try and tidy that up and play it at another time. Amongst them all was this recording from 3UZ, which is a advertising feature. So I haven't quite got myself organised for this, so we'll see what we can do. This is turntable 3, switch it on. And is it 78? Yes, it is. This is it's a promotional thing for Tasma radiograms or something, I think. So what do we do next? I can get that fader up and start the playthrough noise reduction. And we might just fade that in. It takes a moment to get these things organised. You have to need 4 arms. So let's see if it's going to work or not. Here we go. Let's fade this up for just a bit and have a listen to some 3UZ off an acetate recorded probably in the mid-50s.
Get an earful of that hummingbird singing with all his might. Get an eyeful of that painted sky. Ain't it a wonderful sight? Oh, how do you do? Ain't the sun shining brightly? How do you do? Ain't the breeze blowing lightly? I'm telling you, while the steps kind of sprightly, feeling fine, sure as you're born.
How do you do? My name is David Lowe, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Australia's finest musical instrument, the one you're looking at and listening to now, the Tasmagram. The purpose of this special recording is to help convince you through your own ears that the Tasmagram is the only choice for you. As the star of our Tasmagram demonstration, here is Ross Higgins, well known to you already on disc and over the air in Tasma's Change in Tune show.
Hello there.
What number have you chosen, Ross?
Well, David, how about A Pretty Girl Is Like a Melody? After all, where the Tasmagram is concerned, the accent is on melody.
How right you are.
A pretty girl is like a melody that haunts you night and day. Just like the strain of a haunting refrain, she'll start upon a marathon and run around your brain. You can't escape. She's in your memory by morning, night, and noon. She will leave you and then come back again. A pretty girl is just like a pretty tune. Can't escape, she's in your memory by morning, night and noon. She will leave you and then come back again. A pretty girl is just like a pretty tune.
If you would like to win this beautiful Tasma radiogram and at the same time assist a worthy appeal, be sure to obtain your ticket at this theatre.
Okay, I can only assume that that was actually played at cinemas. We heard 3UZ, it's on a 3UZ acetate, and it says Tasma, what does it say? I'll have a look at the typed label. It says Tasma demonstration record. There we have it. A little bit of radio nostalgia, one I didn't even know I had there. And there's a few from 3TR in sale. Could be interesting to try one of those another time if they're playable, but I've a number of them just completely dissolved as soon as I took them off the shelf, including there's one from a 3AW which I'll try and tidy up and rescue, and it's a very early acetate from 1939. It's got the date on it, and you usually associate that medium as being more in the 40s and 50s, so 39's pretty early days, but it's all going white and starting to craze and fall to bits, so we'll try and do something with that. Okay, well, look, I might see... we're going to have some vocalists soon. We're going to move into our female vocalist zone. Then we have an episode of Orbiter X lined up. But we haven't given the pianola a go for a while. So it's something completely unmusical and just horrible. This is the antithesis of everything else. But it's sitting here in the corner, it's never used, and it's sort of a mechanical marvel, these things. They are quite remarkable what they do, and there's so many parts to them, and I might as well use the damn thing. So yes, this is me being slightly anarchist and going against all my principles. In fact, when we've had this pianola for a very long time, and I refused to use it for ages and ages, and upon accumulating some piano rolls, I thought, well, look, there's something intriguing about just the medium and what it represents. And a lot of these are played with four hands, so they're sort of rather unusual from that point of view. They're not just like mimicking one person playing. So, there's a few points of intrigue about them. But of course, there's no dynamics. It's the Phil Spector wall of sound. It's just in your face and a bit horrible. But yeah, all right, we'll switch on microphone 2. I'll go for a waltz down the end of the room and we'll have a pianola offering. So we'll do that, and after that we'll put things back into perspective again with some Billie Holiday. But before then, I can't even remember what I've got lined up on the pianola. We'll have a look and see. This is VK3SL. Now I've got to switch on the other microphonics, and I will need to do a bit of a trip across to the other side of the room, so we'll stand on by. Okay, here we are. I'll take the windsock off this microphone, and I'm going to sort of advance it forward a little bit, and we'll see if that level, hopefully the level won't be too high. I've got to climb over things to get to this, and it gives me a chance to check the transmitter at the same time. So what do we have in store? We have a pianola. I'll raise my voice. Hopefully the compressor can make up for what I can't do otherwise. Here we go. It's called You've Got to See Baby Every Night. It's a foxtrot. That's on a Master Touch World Roll from the 1920s, I presume. And I get myself in the chair and check that everything's lined up, ready to go, and we can stand on by. Block your ears, folks. Here we go for a ride. There's my fitness for the day. Yes, it tends to slow down towards the end, and you've got to pump harder and harder to keep the thing going. Otherwise, you lose tempo, and it's a bit of a workout, to be honest. Quite a workout. All right, back to the other microphonics, and here we are. Well, I really should be working on my fitness, so that's another excuse to use the pianola. Now, have I got the right microphone on? Hello, good. All right, well, what next? Put the headphones back on and let's have a look at the program. Let's see what is next. Oh, yes. I'm keen to keep this feature going on great female vocalists. We had listened to Aretha Franklin last week. We heard a couple of tracks of her. Well, just remembering her. She passed away last week, and it was great to hear those. And then we also heard a very early Billie Holiday track. She made 2 records in 1933, and then a flurry of recordings from 1935 onwards, and of course she became a household name not long after that. But a very early record she made when she was 16. There's only 2 of them. And we heard one last week, that's Your Mother's Son-in-Law. And the other one's a track called Riffin' the Scotch. It's sort of a bit of a take on Scottish music, really, and with a jazz flavour. And again, it features Benny Goodman's band with Charlie Teagarden. And who else? Charlie Teagarden and trumpet. I think Jack Teagarden's on trombone, Goodman, Gene Krupa. Who else? Can't think. I think I had Lester Young in these as well, or some of them. Anyhow, this one's called Riffin' the Scotch, and you really get a sense of her style had already, well, this is the same recording session, and you can sense more than the other recording that the way she plays around the beat and her distinctive, remarkable unique approach to music making is completely and utterly evident at such a young age. So she really had it. So let's have a listen to Billie Holiday with the ensemble, with Benny Goodman's group from this is recorded in December of 1933, and it's the same session as we heard the last track. Now, I wasn't able to get a very good transfer of this. This is off a CD compilation I bought in the early 90s. It's been over-processed to my ears. I sort of like to have a bit more air in the recording, so unfortunately it's been choked a bit, but you still certainly get the feeling, the flavour of it. So let's have a listen to Billie Holiday, and this is VK3SL testing on 160 metres and 2 metres, and also streaming live on the Broadwave streaming service. Whoops. And we heard Riffin, the Scotch. That was, whoops, we'll just fade that one up. That's Billie Holiday with Benny Goodman's ensemble Scratch Group, with Charlie and Jack Teagarden and others from 1933, and one of her very first recordings. And certainly you can hear her wonderful manner of playing, singing around the beat, and her just a unique sense of rhythm, completely unique. She was a class unto herself, was Billie Holiday, and amazing that it's all there at the age of 16. All right, we'll move on. We'll hear another great vocalist. I was having some conversations with John Fleming during the week, and we had some email exchanges, and we mentioned Nina Simone, and I'm particularly interested to hear the influence on J.S. Bach on Nina Simone. She was a classical pianist before she sort of moved towards jazz through sort of not the easiest circumstances. Her life's really tragic, but it's interesting to hear the influence. And she always said Bach was a strong influence on all that she did. And in this particular song, Love Me or Leave Me, there's numerous versions of this with different sort of qualities and ambience. But this one's off a video of her, a film made around about 1960, and she does great improvisation, which is very Bach-like. I think the solo is from one of the English suites of J.S. Bach's English suite, which sort of morphs into the music. Anyhow, well, it's certainly it's of a fugue construction. Anyhow, we'll have a listen to this, and it's great to hear that synthesis of jazz music and classical music in this instance. And she's such an amazing singer and performer in her own right. Early Nina Simone. This is VK3SL, a test transmission on 160, 2 meters, and the Broadwave audio service.
Say love me and leave me and let me be lonely. You won't believe me, but I love you only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else. You might find the night time the right time for kissing. Night time is my time for just reminiscing, regretting instead of forgetting with somebody else. There'll be no one unless that someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. I want your love and I don't want to borrow. Have it today to give back tomorrow. Your love is my love. There's no love for nobody else. Someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. Hey, hey, I want your love and I don't want to borrow. Have it today to give back tomorrow. Your love is my love. My love is your love. Your love is my love. My love is your love. Your love is
Whoops! I didn't turn the button on. Yes, fantastic. Love Me or Leave Me. That was the Peach voice, Nina Simone. Hey, look, I'm sorry, folks. I have to hear that again. Too short. I have to hear it again, and it's just such a compelling performance, and very interesting what she's doing. And I think the guitar's got a part in the fugue as well. If you can hear there's a bit of textural interest with the guitar, and of course the bass driving it, and she is just such a great artist. Amazing stuff. Now I've determined not to wax lyrical quite as much this week. I'll let the music do the speaking. Take two, Simone style.
Say love me and leave me and let me be lonely. You won't believe me, but I love you only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else. You might find the night time the right time for kissing. Night time is my time for just reminiscing, regretting instead of forgetting with somebody else. There'll be no one unless that someone is you. I intend to be independent. Have it today to give back tomorrow. Your love is my love. There's no love for nobody else. Someone is you. I intend to be independently blue. Hey, hey, I want your love and I don't want to borrow. Have it today to give back tomorrow. Your love is my love. My love is your love. Your love is my love. My love is your love. Your love is my
Whoa, a live performance of Nina Simone and Love Me or Leave Me, recorded in the, I think about 1960. And, wow, how about that for a meeting of the greats? You hear the remarkable sound of Bach being, reinvigorated within a jazz context. It's fantastic. So, yeah. Bravo, Nina Simone. We'll have to listen to more. We'll have to keep looking out for those recordings. I particularly like the cross-reference between the different genres. It's always an interesting one. For me, as a presenter and listener and everything. All right, different inspiration now. We're changing gear. We're going to continue with our sci-fi series, Orbiter X. We're up to episode 3. We've been giving this a bit of a run. We've got the whole series here, so we'll enjoy these episodes. Now, this one here, it looks like it goes for quite some time, so we might have to foreshorten it, and it must be a double episode, I think, something like that. Anyhow, we'll run it for about 20 minutes, and then we might have to do a strategic fade and then pick up where we left off next time. So yes, I can't remember where we're up to in the story. Oh yes, the main characters have been captured and they've been taken to somewhere far away, and they were drugged, and when they woke up they're on another planet or they're in a different zone, and they're just coming to terms with what's happened. So I think in this episode we'll discover where they've been transported to and a little bit more about the story of the kidnappers, the UFOs, as they say. So let's have a listen. Orbiter X, episode 3. This is XBBC. And we'll let you make up your mind whether or not you think. Well, we'll let the listeners find their own course with this one. This is vintage science fiction from VK3SL.
Well, Gelvin, what news?
Almost our entire headquarters staff are working on the interference transmitter, Dr. Kramer. But it will have to be virtually rebuilt, I'm afraid.
I knew that hours ago when I made my first inspection. What I want to know now is how long will it take?
Several days. And I don't like leaving Britain and his team on Orbiter X.
They can do no harm.
Perhaps not. But...
Okay. Well, I tell you what, I'll underscore that one there, and with an apology, because I sourced this from a different site, and I've actually got the wrong episode 3. So these are longer chunks of the program. So this is actually a fair way downstream. So unfortunately, we've sort of lost a bit of continuity there. So with apologies, we will go back to the original episode 3 next week, and we may have to listen to the section again in context. But I think you probably picked up a general idea of what's going on. But it'd be nice to hear the whole thing with a better sense of flow. So yes, I realise that there's 2 sources for Orbiter X, and I've actually used one of the a secondary source which has got different tags on it. So never the mind. It's interesting nevertheless, and it gives you a snapshot into conspiracy theories and space exploration in the 1950s. It was getting quite late anyhow, and I wanted to have a little bit of a classical music offering to for the next little while, and actually featuring the music of DeFeo. But before we do that, I've got this one queued up, and I think this might be very worthwhile playing because of all of the argy-bargy and the craziness that's been going on in the political sphere today. I don't get political on these test transmissions, but I will play this track, which sort of sums up something of the atmosphere. So we'll have a listen. I won't announce it at all. I'll let this little vignette speak for itself. This is VK3SL test transmission on 160 meters, 2 meters, and also the broadwave streaming service.
Night special. There's great excitement here at the moment, as we should be getting the first result through any moment now. We don't know where it'll be from. It might be from Leicester or from Luton. The polling's been quite heavy in both areas. Oh, wait a moment. I'm just getting a loud buzzing noise in my left ear. Excuse me a moment. Anyway, let's go straight over to James Gilbert at Leicester.
Well, it's a straight fight here at Leicester. On the left of the returning officer, you can see Arthur Smith, the sensible candidate, and his agent. And on the other side is the silly candidate, Jethro Walrus Titty, with his agent and his wife.
Here is the result for Leicester. Arthur J. Smith.
Sensible party.
30,612. Jethro Q. Walrus Titty.
Silly party.
32,108.
Well, there's the first result, and the silly party have held Leicester. What do you make of that, Norman?
Well, this is largely as I predicted, except that the silly party won. I think this is mainly due to the number of votes cast. Gerald?
Well, there's a swing here to the silly party, but how big a swing, I'm not going to tell you.
Well, if I may, I think the interesting thing here is the big swing to the silly party, and of course the very large swing back to the sensible party had a tendency to wobble up and down in the middle because the screw's loose.
I'm afraid I can't think of anything.
I can't add anything to that. Colin?
I just butt in at this point and say this is in fact the very first time I've ever appeared on television.
No, we haven't time because we're going straight over to Luton.
Here at Luton, it's a three-cornered fight between Alan Jones, sensible party, in the middle, Tarquin, Fim, Tim, Lim, Bim, Wim, Bim, Lim, Bus Stop, Fatang, Ole, Biscuit Barrel, silly party, and Kevin Phillips, Bong, the slightly silly candidate.
Alan Jones.
On the left, sensible party.
9,112. Kevin Phillips, Bong.
On the right, slightly silly.
Naught. Tarquin, Fim, Tim, Lim, Bim, Wim, Bim, Limbus, Stop, Fatang, Ole, Biscuit Barrel.
Silly.
12,441.
And so the silly party has taken Luton.
A gain for the silly party at Luton, the first gain of the election. Norman?
Well, this is a highly significant result. Luton, normally a very sensible constituency with a high proportion of people who aren't a bit silly, has gone completely gaga.
Do we have the swing at Luton?
Well, I've worked out the swing, but it's a secret.
There isn't the swing. How about the swan?
Well, I've got the swang here in this box, and it's looking fine. I can see through the breathing holes that it's eating up peanuts at a rate of knots.
And how about the swing?
Well, it's 29% up over 600 feet, but it's a little bit soft around the edges about...
What do you make of the nylon dot cardigan and plastic mule rest?
There's no such thing!
Thank you, Spike.
Can I just come in here and say that the swang has choked itself to death?
Oh, the election's really beginning to hot up now.
I can't add anything to that.
Can I just say at this point, this is in fact the second time I've ever appeared on television?
I'm sorry, Sasha, we're just about to get another result.
Oh, from Harpenden. Now, this is a key seat because in addition to the official silly candidate, there is an independent, very silly candidate who may split the silly vote.
Mr. Elsie...
Silly?
26,317. James Walker...
Sensible.
26,380.
That was close.
Malcolm, Peter, Brian, Telescope, Adrian, Umbrella Stand, Jasper, Wednesday, Stoat Gobbler, John, Raw Vegetable, Arthur, Norman, Michael, Featherstone, Smith, Northcott, Edwards, Harris, Mason, Frampton, Jones, Fruitbat, Gilbert will keep a welcome. Williams, if I could walk that way, Jenkins, Tiger Draws, Pratt, Thompson, raindrops keep falling on my head, Darcy, Carter, Pussycat, don't sleep in the subway, Barton, Mannering, Smith.
Very silly. Well, there you have it. A sensible gain here at Driffield.
Norman.
Well, I've just heard from Luton that my aunt is ill. Possibly gastroenteritis, Gerald?
Well, if this were repeated over the whole country, it'd probably be very messy. Colin.
Can I just butt in and say here that this is probably the last time I shall ever appear on television?
No, I'm afraid you can't. We haven't got time. Just to bring you up to date with a few results that you may have missed, Engelbert Humperdinck has taken Barrow-in-Furness. That's a gain from Anne Hayden-Jones and her husband, Pip. Arthur Negus has held Bristol's. That's not a result, that's a bit of gossip. And Mary Whitehouse has just taken umbrage. Could be a bit of trouble then. Apparently Wales is not swinging at all. No surprise there. And Monty Python has held the credits.
we heard Nancy Weir at the piano playing Defaya's Ritual Fire Dance. And that's from a recent discovery, in fact. It's with thanks to Chris, who found this in an AWP shop, a Spotlight Classic Super Sound Microgroove record from 1956. It says Hi-Fi Supreme on the cover. And this is exciting news because we've got another compilation of the music of Nancy Weir. She made about 4 LPs for Spotlight, maybe a couple more. I think there were a couple of 12-inch records she made earlier on. But it's great to celebrate Nancy Weir. We've featured her quite prominently on these tests over the last year, and her story has been told. And it's work in progress. We're accumulating information, and we look forward to hearing more. In fact, would be great if we could find her a live recording of her playing the Schumann Concerto. She sort of owned the Schumann Concerto in a sense. It was considered to be a work that she played with great authority and was recognised for her interpretations when she was abroad. And she performed it numerous times upon arriving back in Australia in the early 50s. And there are numerous recordings of that around, but we haven't unearthed one yet. And the Beethoven C minor, the third piano concerto, is another work that we'd like to find, because I think there might be recordings of that around as well. But anyhow, we are slowly but surely discovering discovering more about Nancy Weir and about people who work with her. And I've discovered another one of my work colleagues actually turned pages for Nancy in her later years at the Brisbane Con in the 1960s. So yes, stories abound. We'll have to keep this one going. And now we have another album. We'll feature tracks here and there, and I'll certainly be putting this up on YouTube in the next little while, so look out for it in the next few days. This is an album called Music to Charm with Nancy Weir. All right, getting close to the end of the program, I think I'll just have 2 more sort of smallish compilations. We've just heard the music of Defaya. We heard the Ritual Fire Dance. But now we'll hear an interesting little compilation of La Vida Breve by Defaya. Great piece written from it's the Spanish dance from the opera La Vida Breve, and it's performed by 3 artists, and we've sort of assembled this in a way that you can hear them in sharp relief and compare the interpretation. So we'll hear 3 great violinists. First one being Jascha Heifetz, followed by Jacques Thibault, and then Jeanette Neveu. All wonderful, wonderful players and very individual interpretations, so it'll be sort of food for thought hearing the different approaches to the work. I won't try and define them. When I try and define things and wax lyrical, it all gets a bit messy, so I'll let the music speak for itself. But enjoy 3 very interesting and varied interpretations of the Spanish dance from La Vida Breve by Emmanuel Defaya. So we'll cue that one up, goes for about 10 minutes, and then we'll start ushering in our closing items. This is VK3SL. Almost there. And we heard then the La Vida Brave, the Spanish dance from La Vida Brave by De Fea, played first by Jascha Heifetz, then Jacques Thibault, and followed by Jeanette Neveu. Three remarkable interpretations, incredibly varied and interesting to hear such a characterful work played with a different imagination. And so, yes, it's incredible how interpretations can vary. I've been wanting to play that for some time. I've had these recordings, and there's another one I've been trying to find, and I've been digging high and low, trying to find a recording of Erika Marini playing it, which is more Viennese. Erika Marini spent much of her life in Vienna, and that's another very different interpretation. So in time, one day I might put all four on. But anyhow, I thought those three would be certainly worth having a listening to. And I don't think I could say I've got a favourite, but I have well, how shall I say this? No, I don't have a favourite, but if I had to choose, the one I'd listen to the most would have to be the Thibault version, I think. I've got a particular affection for Thibault's playing. I love his often dancing around the beat, and it's that sort of French style is I find very attractive. But I love the Heifetz, and I love the Jeanette Neveu as well. It's such a shame her career was cut short. She was only in her early 30s when she died tragically in that plane crash. And the sad story, of course, is that Jacques Thibault gave the eulogy at Neveu's funeral. And then very shortly after, he died in a plane crash as well. There were so many terrible air tragedies in the 1950s. So two of the three artists we just heard met their demise through aircraft accidents. But putting that aside, the music itself is just timeless. All right, we're getting close to the end now. Well, I'm keen to sort of each week have a short offering of music from the synthesizer, particularly playing Bach, and have a little bit of Walter Carlos. It's Walter Carlos on this record, so I'll be particular about that. But I'm using the same fader as I've just used for the last clip, so I'm needing to just work out the sequence of things here. I think it's going to be a moment of dead air. Maybe I can put an ident on. That sounds like a good idea. The idea is I'm going to play one of the two-part inventions. These are short, and then we'll have a very final offering shortly after that, which I'll announce. So without any further ado, oh, no, I don't need to say that, do I? I just push the button. It's easy peasy. Off we go. This is VK3SL. Testing on 160 metres, 2 metres, and the Broadwave streaming service. Short and sweet. We just heard the two-part invention BWV 784, played by Walter Carlos. And I wonder if he redid that on the recent release of Switched on Bach. This is from Switched on Bach 2. So, yeah, it's got a number of offerings here. There's so much interesting music on this. We'll have to keep this series alive. So we'll try and each week have a small selection of JSB on the synthesizer. Now, I'm going to be off mic for a sec. I'll try and speak up so you can still hear me, but I am using the same turntable, and I'm going to cue up the very last offering for tonight, which is off a 10-inch LP. Records everywhere here. This is a little bit of a mess. Now, where is it? Here it is. We have Kathleen Ferrier, an anthology. And I thought it would be nice to play her recording of Mitternacht. This is the one of the Mahler songs. And it's got a beautiful story attached to it, which I'll read to you. And then we'll let this recording end the show this evening. All right, let's have this is off a Decca, a 10-inch Decca recording. It says Mahler's Mitternacht. It says Mitternacht is one of the songs written by Mahler to the words of Friedrich Ruckert, and Kathleen made the recording in Vienna with the Vienna Philharmonic Orchestra conducted by Bruno Walter. In a biography, I've described how Bruno Walter advised her to study these songs. In a letter about their program for a joint recital at the Edinburgh Festival in 1951, he wrote, "These last three songs are of a religious character, and particularly, Mitternacht is one of the most powerful religious invocations." It goes on, in June 1953, when she was very ill, he wrote, "Our last common work, the records of Mahler's songs and Das Lied von der Erde, belong in my mind to the most beautiful musical events of our time, and whoever hears them must respond with an upsurge of admiration and love for you." This is Bruno Walter talking about Kathleen Ferrier. While no translation can be adequate, the following may throw light on Kathleen's interpretation of this song. And it goes on, it says, "At midnight I awoke and gazed up to heaven. No star of all the starry host smiled down upon me at midnight. At midnight my thoughts went out into the bounds of darkness. No light brought me thoughts of comfort. At midnight I noticed the beating of my heart. I felt a single pang of pain. At midnight I fought the battle of human woe, but with all my power I could not decide it. At midnight I gave the power into thy hand. Lord, thou keepest watch over life and death at midnight." So there's that's just a sort of a rough interpretation. Really powerful performance, one of her last, and this was discussed in the documentary we heard last week. And the Mahler songs. In fact, there was another one of the Mahler songs was featured. But look, we'll have a listen to this as a final offering tonight. So I'll look forward to your company next time, and thank you for your indulgence listening to all of this bilge. It's been quite an episode of a varied program of hill and dale offerings tonight from all corners of the earth, all corners of this booth. All right, I'll say cheerio. I'll have to cue up this record, and then afterwards I'll listen back on the Kenwood in case Frank or anybody else is around. So this is VK3SL saying cheerio for now, and thank you again for your indulgence. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. That's not the right track. Excuse me. Let me get this right. Yeah, sorry about that. We are right now.